not TA because you still are linking it to concepts of discipline.
Well, I believe that in absence of having that in there, the grievance and arbitration procedure can be, maybe we just got sidetracked. We've already been on this.
Well, we did, because what happened is you made a reference to Article 3, non-discrimination, and we withdrew our TA on Article 3. And that's where our conversation came to there. That's my recollection.
I was trying to sort through all this. There must be something else.
But we're prepared to TA on Article 18.
What was the...
which is really, we're TAing on it the same way we TA'd on it the last time, and your members rejected it. So why do you think if we TA on it this time, your members are going to accept it?
Because the members didn't vote article by article. They voted on the entire package.
But it was in your list of things, the reasons to reject it, as I recall.
My letters to my members are no concern of the counties. I don't know if you read the letter or why you read the letter. I certainly didn't send it to you. But that contract was voted down as an entire document, and it certainly wasn't. There was a tremendous amount of things we TA'd in there. So if you're gonna ask that question, then why not ask the question for every single other article that we TA'd before?
Well, we would like to know the answer to that question, because we do want to see the contract get ratified. We do want to understand what in it resulted in your members rejecting it. Other than the blank, well, I think I do know. I think it was the generalized message from the union not to ratify it.
You don't think?
I think that was sufficient.
You don't think these members can think for themselves or understand why? I mean, we have a pretty large negotiating committee here who is in contact with their members a heck of a lot more than I am.
No, that's not. I don't think that's the case. I think that the members look to the union to represent them and have acquiesced to the union making some of those decisions and representations on their behalf. I think that's why the contract got rejected, because you told me to reject it.
Well,
but it doesn't really matter.
I'm flattered by your acknowledgement of recommendation being that effective. But I'm here to tell you that regardless, if I recommended that the contract get voted down, that the contract would have been voted down anyway by the members. I'm here to tell you that. Even if I said, come on guys, we need to vote this thing in, it's a good contract, that I would probably have a mutiny on my committee, and that the thing would have been voted down anyway. I'm going to say that with confidence. So just because the union representative and myself recommended that the contract get voted down, there's more than one person making that decision. So I thought there was a third article that we're referencing with the non-discrimination issue called the or isn't that maybe some arbitration procedure?
Well, that's where we ended our discussion on it.
I think it was the evaluations or something, or
it was in evaluations too.
We were talking about evaluations, and the issue of discrimination came up, and I tried under grievance procedure, so the whole thing.
Stick with grievance for a minute. We're prepared to sign off with that one additional clause stricken, which is what we did last time. You okay with that? Let's sign off on it.
Yeah, I want to talk to my committee first, but I think we are. So let's go back to non-discrimination. So Article 3, non-discrimination, is off the table.
We withdrew our TA on it, yes. Yeah, the paragraph 1 of it, we probably talked about this before, is that We don't really need it anyway. You can't discriminate, right?
Not legally.
Okay, so it almost suggests as though if we have language that says that we can discriminate, that we'd be able to do that, but we can't. We'd still like to see employees report incidents of discriminatory conduct, because we think that does improve the workplace, and it allows both you and us to timely evaluate it and investigate it. So.
Well, if I remember correctly, the first paragraph was our proposal, and the second one was accounting from the county, and we came to an agreement, with the current verbiage here. I still don't understand what's defective about that.
I don't think we need it.
You don't want the bargaining unit employees reporting conduct?
It's not important to us.
It's not.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's not. They're probably not going to do it anyway, so we're going to discipline somebody for not reporting it. Just one more point of controversy. They do, they do. If they don't, they don't. Our investigation, when somebody makes a complaint, we'll process it.
So still consider withdrawn.
Yeah, why don't we just have Article 3 as reserved, not address discrimination at all.
Well, I'm not agreeing to that at this point in time, but I understand your desire to withdraw it. I'm not saying that we agree to that. I mean, if you would withdraw a TA, you would have a right to withdraw a TA. I'm not saying that the article's off the table. I was actually withdrawn last time, right, which is what the 5th
It was.
All right, so we're going to get back to you on 18. They withdrew the TA. Meaning we've agreed to language, both parties agreed to language. They're withdrawing their agreement to language. It doesn't mean that the proposal's still not there. We're considering it still being on the TA.
Okay. Okay.
So 18 is grievance and arbitration procedure. We're going to get back to you after August on that. 19, seniority. Our last proposal was on strike, stuff that's been stricken, to remove the bottom two sentences, bottom two paragraphs. We don't think they need to be in there. Those are separate. County's retention matrix is a whole other, kind of like the grievance and arbitration procedure, bringing in discipline into it. I think we could probably reach agreement with the first sentence and the second one unstruck, and leaving the last two, the bumping rights and layoff and recall and the county's retention matrix, leave those as separate issues to be addressed in other articles.
So your suggestion is that the Article 19 really just be a definition of seniority.
Basically, yeah. That's what it amounts to.
And where were you on the issue of somebody that's rehired after voluntary separation, retirement, or termination for disciplinary reasons?
Well, if they're ultimately terminated, you know, I mean, let's just stay away from that one. Retirement or layoff more than a year of voluntary separation. If the person leaves and comes back, then they're given a new seniority date.
Unrelated to how long? Because we talked last time that if they voluntarily leave and are rehired, I guess we did agree that it would become the rehired. They would lose all their seniority.
We got into some discussion about layoff, and I don't want to kind of make it convoluted. But when the county lays somebody off, they view it as being termination, and we don't. You know, and so, you know, I just got to resurrect some of the discussion last time. So if somebody quits, somebody voluntarily resigns, and they come back 2 weeks later and say, you know, I made a horrible mistake. Well, they did make a horrible mistake, and so when they get rehired, they're going to have a new seniority date. Not to say that their FRS time or whatever else is kept intact, and if you guys want to honor their PTO hours, and whatever, but their seniority has been broken. As long as there's no misunderstandings, you know, I'm sure you're going to have the proper documentation to memorialize somebody's separated employment.
So why don't we just have Article 19 say seniority definition, the first sentence the way we propose it, where it adds the clause most recent hire date, and then treat all these other issues in other articles. All right?
No, because I think it's very valuable to have examples of when seniority can only be broken. But as I said, maybe broken only by. So people clearly understand, you know, when seniority is broken. I don't think that delves off into different issues as they do in the bottom 2 sentences, because what you're talking about in the sentence, the bottom 2 sentences is explaining when seniority shall be considered for the retention matrix. We're talking about seniority can only be broken.
Well, once we have a definition, if we don't have any language in the contract anywhere else, seniority doesn't mean anything, right?
Well, my concern with what your proposal a minute ago was, and it was, I guess the last time we were together, when you say a person's most recent hire date, that there's going to be a concern that when a person comes back, that I didn't give them a new hire date. Why didn't you give them a new hire? Well, geez, they only quit 2 weeks ago, and so I'm not going to give them a new hire date. And then so their most recent date of hire, it's not going to be viewed as a break in seniority.
Well, I'll defer to Barbara whether that could even happen that way.
Yeah.
That seems to me
I'm
that'd be
trying
pretty big.
to think of a scenario when that would happen.
Well, give me a scenario why these reasons.
Is there something that happened? Is there an individual that people have discussed that came back and got a different date and, you know, somehow got some advantage?
I don't think they got a different date. I think that's what the issue is.
Are we dealing with a hypothetical problem, or
I'm dealing with boilerplate language that's in almost all of our agreements, because it eliminates issues that can come up down the road where somebody doesn't understand what a break in seniority is. And so what is the harm in having that? Why is it so important to get rid of it when it's just when it clarifies something, unless you disagree with the clarifications?
Well, the first clarification, voluntarily separated from employment by the employee, if they then came back to work, that would be consistent with the most recent hire date language in the first paragraph, right? They come back, they get whatever the date they're rehired.
As long as it's understood that was a break in seniority, that was a separation. Because if someone doesn't understand that, or doesn't realize that, they're not going to be given a new hire date. So by not having those situations identified, you can argue, or somebody can argue from the county that says the guy that left and then came back 2 weeks later, he still holds the same seniority. Well, why is that? Well, his most recent days of hire was 2003. Yeah, but you were supposed to change it. Where does it say I have to change it?
Maybe an easier way to deal with it, let's just say that, let's have a provision somewhere, it wouldn't be in this article, that somebody who voluntarily separates from county employment is not subject to rehire.
I'm not interested in having that provision.
Because then you don't even have to have the issue of your hypothetical that we might have, not marked the employment file correctly because they can't come back.
A person, unless they're told otherwise, the most recent date of hire can be at the mercy of whoever determines that they've come back.
I'm lost on your logic that you don't mind sticking it to somebody who made a mistake and left and comes back 2 weeks later, except they can't maintain their seniority.
Well, how much time do you want to have someone hold their seniority after they've quit? Is that what this is about? You want someone to have more time?
No, I'm happy with saying it's their most recent hire date.
Well, you just said a minute ago that you wouldn't mind having a provision that if somebody quit, that they can never be hired again, but it should be in some other place in the contract.
Because that eliminates our debate over, whether they're entitled to seniority or not coming back, and it eliminates your hypothetical that we're going to mismark the file to give them their original hire date. So we wouldn't have to talk about it.
All I'm concerned with is having clearly defined language that would define what a break in seniority is. And we have an article that defines seniority, and does it seem so unusual to have a further definition of what a break in seniority would entail? I mean, what is so hard about having 4 points on there? Not even 3. There's 4. Sorry. There's 4 points on there of what constitutes a break in seniority. What are you afraid of? I don't understand. Because I explained to you what our concern is. By eliminating those things, something wrong can happen. Unless you want to expand that first sentence, seniority means the total time worked by an employee for Pasco County commencing with the employee's most recent hire date. I wouldn't mind, to tell you the truth, if this is what's going to fix it. It means the total consecutive time worked by an employee. Does that help?
Consecutive time worked by an employee, okay.
Without interruption or break by an employee for Pasco County. I think that might work. Consecutive time, total consecutive time work without a break. Effectively, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, what about leave without pay and inactive?
That wouldn't be a break. Would it be a break in employment? A break in employment would be employment.
Time worked. Consecutive time worked. Right?
Total consecutive time work without a break. Okay, so if someone going out on FMLA, there's now a break in employment.
What about inactive status?
Listen, guys, I like the proposal the way it is. And all you're going to get out of me is
the
another...
questions I'll get.
Huh?
I'm just giving you questions that I will get.
Okay, the questions that you get, what is there not to understand when somebody voluntarily separates, or somebody retires, or someone's laid off for more than a year, or somebody is terminated? What point does someone not understand that constitutes a break in seniority? I'm lost. Other than you've got some sort of hidden agenda. Why are we
I
arguing?
understand. So if somebody's on inactive status for 9 months, that 9 months counts.
What is the cause of is that what this is about?
No, I'm trying to think of something that's not included in your was there.
Why would a person be in inactive status? What would be the cause of that?
Their FMLA,
You can't fire a person as an FMLA.
no, I didn't say fire.
Okay,
And
well,
you
tell
didn't
me.
let me finish my sentence. Their
Hurry up.
FMLA,
Hurry up.
their FMLA ran out, and they're not able to come back to work yet. They go on inactive status. They get charged with a felony. They go on inactive status till they get resolved. There's a whole bunch of them.
Okay, well, in those particular scenarios, if someone has exceeded what provided for them in either federal law or in this contract, there would have to be some sort of an agreement between the exclusive bargaining unit representative and the county to make an exception. I mean, if someone's FMLA expired, you don't have a requirement to keep them on, right? If someone's FMLA expired, because,
Terminate them at that point?
I'm sorry?
Who wants to terminate them at that point?
No, I didn't say that. So I didn't say that. I said you don't have a requirement to keep them on. It's federal law. I'm not making this up. It's not my law. I'd have a different law.
I know.
So since you have a requirement to give somebody the allotted time on their FMLA, and they've exhausted all that time, you, as an employer, don't have a requirement to maintain them as an employee. I'm not saying that the union is not interested in giving a person an extension, but if you give certain people extensions and other people not to give them extensions would be inconsistent. Okay, so just because somebody's FMLA expired and they are not fit to come back to work, and the county takes a position with one employee, well, I'm not going to terminate you because, I'll give you a little bit more time, that's commendable, that's great. But you got to be consistent with that application. And so therefore, that person's seniority will not have been broken at that point.
Maybe it would make more sense to talk about where you want seniority to come into play, to understand how the definition should play out.
I thought that we were going to leave Article 19 as a definition because obviously there's other things in the contract that we want to see seniority applied to, and there may be fully expecting us not reaching agreement on some of those things, and hopefully we can work through them. But at least we can get at least the definition buttoned up, and the proposal that's before you, without the strikeouts in it, and in absence of those two last sentences, is a fine definition. If you want to further expand it, that's fine.
Actually, I think it might be better to go the other route until we tie it into what it comes into play for, which would be seniority means the total, and then add your word consecutive time worked by an employee for Pasco County, period.
And then we're getting away from breaks. What concept?
Yeah.
Don't you think
All
that's
right,
useful?
then we don't have to worry about the break part.
Yeah, but don't you? Well, then basically you're getting with the same proposal that you wanted initially. Why don't you find it useful to have further definitions of what a break in seniority would be?
Because every break creates its own source of controversy and analysis, and having a simple statement that somebody works here for 24 years and leaves for a year and 2 months and comes back and works for another 2 years, seems to me they've worked for the original time plus the 2 years for the purposes of seniority.
Well, it's not the way we view seniority, but it's just not the way we view seniority. The consecutive time spent is what it's all about in our world. I mean, I understand total accrued time, that's hey, how long have you been working here? I'm working here for 25 years. No kidding, 25 years straight? Well, I took a couple of years off and came back.
I wonder if you feel that way if we were not talking about your first contract, but your current contract. And you really feel that way? This works elsewhere for the Teamsters, that somebody paid you dues for 20 years, decides to take a sabbatical for a year and a half, that they lose the 20 years of seniority when they come back to work?
I think most, if not all, people who pay dues to our local union understand that when you give up your job and you walk away and you call it a sabbatical, everyone else in the bargaining unit says he quit, that those dues-paying members would understand that they're not entitled to take a sabbatical without having some sort of excused leave provision, that they fall under some sort of
Who does
vacation.
that benefit? I'm not clear. Maybe I just don't understand from your point of view who that benefits. Who does that benefit?
It benefits the other people that are working around them, because you're holding positions, theoretically, an employer can hold positions for people who don't work there. And that creates a lot of problems. And when somebody, it's rewarding an employee for, hey man, I've been hitting it. I've been coming here and I've been hitting it day after day after day after year after year. And people drift away and they're going to come back right ahead of me again. That's not fair.
So
That's
somebody, let's go back to the 20-year employee. They put in all their time. They've been a Teamster member. They've paid their dues for 20 years. And forget the word sabbatical. They need to take a year and a half off to care for their parents or their spouse that's gravely ill. They're done with that. That part of their need to care for a family member is over. They come back to work. They start new from your point of view as a
They have
Teamster?
FMLA to use, and if they exceed their FMLA and the county or the employer is willing to enter an agreement to extend FMLA, I think we would certainly honor that request.
So that would
Well,
be,
I think, I'm here to tell you,
I'm glad to
you're
hear
not a
that.
Teamster, and you probably never have been one, you probably never will be one, I don't know for sure. But the, most Teamsters,
oh, if I could get a shirt like that, I might, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like that. I do like your shirt.
thanks, I don't like yours. I think it's ugly.
I've been thinking about getting rid of this shirt,
It clashes
actually.
with the tie, and it clashes with the jacket,
Yeah.
that's just my opinion.
It's a good travel shirt, though, because it holds its
Sure.
crease.
It's stained on it, you won't even notice. So at any rate,
I had 10 more
Most of
just
our-
like it. They were $10 for $1.
save them for the red. Let's save on red. So you can, I think most dues-paying members understand how seniority works, so they wouldn't be a dues-paying member, especially someone who's been in the union for 20 years. They get it. You know, they get it. They understand how seniority
Well, I
works.
don't get it.
I know, that's why you're an employer labor attorney rather than a union labor attorney.
I mean, the county wouldn't stick it to that employee. It took a year and a half off to care for.
Well, one man's sticking something to another one is someone else's excuse for getting something they don't deserve. And I've fully explained in your hypothetical scenario that the union would be more than willing to explain to the surrounding bargaining unit members and say, hey, listen, this guy has a genuine FMLA event that's continuing on long beyond what the United States government offers, federal law offers. And we think it's only fair that this man should be able to care for his family. But I'll tell you what, when we find out 2 weeks later, the guy go off on a cruise for 2 months, or he wasn't being forthright or honest about the reason why he needed to take a year and a half off to care for, which is an unusually long time, by the way, to care for a loved one, well, then we'd probably raise the issue that the guy was not being truthful and honest and asking for that excuse. But that's just the way seniority works, and you don't agree with that, and that's fine. This is what we have to have to maintain fairness.
All right, so why don't we skip to where seniority comes into play?
Well, what about annual leave, if we're going in order of,
We go in order. We go in order every time. It hasn't gotten us anywhere. If we're talking about seniority, let's see it in real life now. Our proposal is that it only comes into play for the purposes of retention.
that it only comes into play for retention?
And employee seniority shall only be taken into consideration only for the limited purposes of application of the county's retention matrix.
Right, and we are not agreeing to the status quo retention matrix. Don't do it. So,
You want to replace it with a straight seniority provision. Most junior member of the county workforce gets laid off first, right?
well, we've given a counter that alters the current reduction we're
before, we still went to the next level.
Oh, yeah, it must be the opposite, that's right. All right, let me go to your, this is your 2/20/13 proposal on it? Does that work, the date? Oh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, this is your a point per year proposal.
Yeah, I mean, that was a compromise from our earlier position. But the committee has given me the authority to agree to this if it's,
Well, we'll agree to a point per year with a 3-point maximum.
funny to sure.
It seems to me like you were protecting seniority with the break.
Right.
And you want to take it away with this job.
1 second, I've got to make myself a note to wear this shirt every time we bargain.
We got time.
Take the two-man tailor, sit in the sack.
I just agreed with Fernando County with some very fair language, you know, for openings. I know we're talking about layoff right now, but
We're talking about retention is actually what we're talking about, but.
well, layoff is.
Yeah. All right, but
Layoff and recall. I
What'd you
mean,
do with Hernando? What'd you work out there?
It was also good enough to get a ratification by the members.
All right, let's hear about it then.
Well, you know, like I said a minute ago, we're talking more about layoff and recall, but it applies when someone's job is being eliminated because of a, you know, a reorganization or something, you know, when you decide that this particular department is, you know, going to be shifted under another, whatever. I mean, you shuffle things around, and then by the time it all flushes out, you have to reduce the amount of employees working on it. And so we just base it on the concept of when people are considered to be, you know, equally qualified. And so then say, okay, well, then how do you determine that? And when you have people that are determined to be equally qualified, the senior person, you know, seniority will prevail when you have one or more people who are equally qualified. And so it makes a world of difference in certain job classifications, and it doesn't make too much difference in others. Meaning some jobs are highly technical and they require a lot more to be proficient in that job, and then you have other jobs that are more entry level or, you know, a little bit more basic in their qualifications. And so if somebody can do a more basic job just as well as a person who's in that job, and they only have room for one person, then seniority would prevail.
Did you define what equally qualified meant?
Well, it does have a, you know, it has some criteria, you know, and it basically takes into consideration, you know, the possibility of a test, you know, like, you know, someone says I can operate a piece of machinery as an example, and if the employer wants some proof or verification they can operate that machine, takes into consideration the employee's, you know, overall work record. I mean, it has some latitude for the employer to say that this employee just doesn't do well as an employee. And so how can we call this person equally qualified when they have the amount of problems, you know, especially if they have an excessive record of discipline, that would affect it. But again, when you have two employees that are comparable, okay, well, neither of them have the best disciplinary record, or both of them have a couple of hiccups in the past, but they're past that now. When things are considered reasonably equal or equally qualified, that seniority would be there. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. And come to an understanding that, and that applies not only for reduction of force, but it also applies for openings and promotions. It's all kind of tied together.
So this determination of equally qualified is or is not reserved to management?
It's reserved to management in a way that it says as judged by management, but I certainly have the opportunity to raise an argument that management's judgment wasn't based on fact. And so when I say that you've judged them to be equally qualified, well, what did you base your judgment on?
So how do you raise that argument?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet. And I would imagine that the grievance procedure, and let's just say in a wild scenario, and basically the employer knows what we're looking for. We just want to have some facts to back up what you're saying. If you're saying that this employee is so rotten or not qualified, what did you base that on? You got some sort of, I hope you have some sort of documentation or and that's all we're looking for, fair shake.
So is that raising that argument informal or formal?
We haven't even known. I think it would be informal to the point that if it was informal and we weren't satisfied with the response, I guess then it would become formal. I don't know. I mean, first we say, I'd probably have a discussion with the HR rep and say, well, we got a complaint that you picked Billy over Bob. And well, what's the complaint? Well, it seems like Bob is way more qualified than Billy, but you picked Billy over Bob. And then, we start getting into why that decision was made. And if I was told by an HR representative, well, that's just our decision, that's what we're sticking with, and I said, well, can I see any kind of documentation? No, I'm not seeing anything.
See, but that's the evaluation of qualified, equally qualified is really what our matrix is all about. It gives specific points for specific measurable criteria. So there's no what was management thinking. You could figure out what management was thinking. All they did was apply a formula.
I was thinking the same thing.
When we went before the board, all the commissioners were there were very concerned how favoritism plays into the matrix. They all said that they wanted the favoritism out of the matrix. 1 point for every year will do that. That's right from the board. That's right from the board themselves.
They didn't say to do 1 point per year.
No, but they were very concerned about the favoritism.
So if it
Well,
was,
that would only come into play in category 2, right?
anything that's based
In
on
the evaluation of
Yes.
performance, right? And that is a system that the county is working on.
Yeah.
working on, or is this is still a work in progress, or? You said you were working on it.
Yeah.
What are you working on? I thought this was, is this still not a final proposal?
No,
The evaluation
the
system.
annual evaluation
Which we change from
system.
time to time. So it's changing again.
Well, item 2 is where
This is where you would think favoritism would come in.
this is where it already has come in.
Okay.
This is where favoritism exists in item 2. So our idea is to eliminate 2, but we're trying to, work with you guys, and so if we have at least enough of credit given for years of service, then it might overshadow some of the defects. It's not going to overshadow all of them, but we can live with the defects and 2 if we have 1 as proposed. Still keep doing your thing with the evaluation. That way you guys still get what you want, and we can get the thing ratified. Evaluations, what we feel, at least we can get a little bit more of a push again. I mean, what's the reality of a layoff occurring anyway, you guys, is it looking like it's gonna happen anytime soon?
You know, I would say the likelihood is pretty small. And you might have, like last year we had one or two. So the mass layoff thing, I don't see it happening.
So if you don't see it happening, then, and we have several hundred people that are looking at this, you know, with a microscope on our side, and it's something that's probably not even gonna come to fruition, you may want to consider accepting our proposal, because it's probably not something that's gonna even affect you in the long run, but it certainly affects our ability to get them out of production.
The weight on this narrative is just totally out of whack.
We'd say the same about yours.
So that there might be, you know,
So someone can have 25 years or 28 years of service, and they get 1 point more than someone who's been here for 6 years. We think that's greatly out of whack.
well, I mean, maybe we can consider like a point for every 5 years, something like that. And we can look at.
That's what your proposal
What
is.
is it?
0 to 5, 1 point.
Yeah, we'll continue.
Okay. So what would we say? Instead of 6 to 15, or 6 to 10?
All right, there's 2 points, and then 15, up to 15 would be 3, 20 would be 4. I think that's much more balanced.
Doug wants to call for a proposal for 2 points for each 1 year. I'm just kidding. I'm just being, you know, kind of, you know, forthcoming with saying what it's going to take to wrap. And you asked earlier, Jim, what, you know, you guys didn't know why the thing was voted down, and it was more, and I explained it was more than just the local union saying it's contract no good. Well, this is one of the, you know, most important issues that,
During the campaign, it was huge. I mean, this is what was talked about.
Give us a break for just a minute, all right?
come back with some good news.
I'm just going out to my car to get a different shirt. It seems to be interfering with our ability to reach agreement on anything.
No, we did something for.
Good, my tank top.
It looks like a Teamsters, nothing wrong with that.
By these numbers and in a couple of categories. So for seniority, jot down this language or these number of points. From 0 to 3, it would be 1 point. From 4 to 10, it would be 2. 11 to 15 would be 4. 16 to 20 would be 6. 21 to 25 would be 8. And over 25 would be 10. For max,
26,
yeah, over 26 would be 10. So, and 10 would be the maximum points you could get for seniority. Then under performance, leave the points that we have for now, but provide that nobody could lose more than half of their longevity points because of performance. So let's just say somebody in the 21 to 25, they could pick up 8 points for seniority. No matter what their performance is, they can't lose more than 4 points.
Let me ask you a question. On the bottom of page 15, I guess, Article 45. Right, we're looking at the same thing. Is your Article 45 number page 15?
I was working from your proposal, so we're good with that.
I guess anything with the performance thing, that one there is fine.
Yeah,
On the
it should
bottom,
be the same.
as long as it says on the bottom, it says evaluations with no percentage increase FY 09, 10, 11, 12, 13. Does yours say that?
Yes.
Exceeds expectations 7 points, meets expectations 2 points. That is creating a huge issue as well, because, first of all, let me understand, how does that coincide with this chart above it? Is it one or the other or something, or?
Well, what happened was, when we first did the matrix, we had, everybody was getting from 0 to 7.5. So that's where that chart came from, okay? But then, starting in '09, it was just exceeds, meets, and unsatisfactory. And those points correspond with, like, exceeds expectations with the 7.5, meets with the 5, and so it needs improvement with the 2.5, unsatisfactory with 0. So that's where that chart came to this. But since it's been 5 years since we had no increase, we could really do away with that chart, because we're not doing, it's been since fiscal year 8 that we went from 0 to 7.5 in increase.
So, number 2, item number 2, performance, in this chart that goes from 7.5 on down to 0, that's not even going to be in effect until there's raises being given.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to just launch right into exceeding is 7 points, meeting is 2 points, right?
Yeah, we can.
See, what, think about this, even with your new proposal. 7 points, for a person to get 7 points in seniority, or as a reward for their seniority, would have to be in between 20 years and 21, I guess 25, whatever, 20, you go from 6 to 8 with your new, what you just explained there. 16 to 20 equals 6 points, 21 to 25 equals 8 points, right? So, if someone's coming to work, doing their job just as effectively as needed, just as required, as it's required of them, but we have someone who doesn't necessarily like them as much as they like someone else, that they want to reward that other person as a 5-point swing because they're giving a person that's less like 2 points and a person that's well like 7 points. So there's a 5-point swing. And so effectively, you can undo 15 years of seniority just because of an opinion of the supervisor, whoever the evaluator is.
What I said is you can't, you couldn't lose points.
More than half, so that would be 2 or 2.5.
Yeah, but if you want to propose smoothing the bottom part, the 7 and 2, we're okay with that. We'll work with you on adjusting some numbers for the purposes of maintaining a matrix.
Same thing on the needs improvement and unsatisfactory difference.
But that's what it was
Explain
based
that
on.
too.
Yeah, that's just what it was based on. But,
And I don't like any of it, but, the fact that meet expectations, the reason I pointed out on that contrast more is that when someone needs improvement, I would imagine you have some sort of justification for that, or if someone's unsatisfactory. But when someone's meeting expectations compared to someone who's exceeding them, is where it really shines more of it, the ability for favoritism to exist, because, when you evaluate someone as meeting improvement or unsatisfactory, what is going to be relied upon for making that determination?
there's language, it depends on the circumstances. There's language in the evaluation about extra work they did, or initiative they showed, or process improvements, or sometimes they did 2 jobs, somebody else was out sick for a long time, they picked up the slack. There's a lot of different ways they do it.
What is the time span between evaluations? Are they annual, once a year? And my experiences with evaluations, kind of having some problems with evaluations is that something can happen, say the evaluation, are they given out around their anniversary, or is it once a year or same month, or point I'm getting at is if, so suppose someone's anniversary is May 1st, and they've been a good worker all year long with no problems, no issues or anything, and then a week before their evaluation, there's a disagreement with the supervisor that's giving the evaluation. That supervisor goes into that evaluation mindset with, oh, Mike Scioli, yeah, he's the one that, when I told him what he was doing was wrong, he said what I was doing was wrong. It's fresh on his mind, and I've seen this happen. I'm not making this up, where evaluations get really skewed or tanked on because of something that just happened. It's like, well, what about the whole rest of the year? And then that works in reverse too, where with the day after the evaluation, it usually gets forgotten about. And that's the reason I'm asking that question by the time the next evaluation comes. And the reason I'm asking about what do you rely upon, because if it's relied upon just the evaluation itself, the person that's completing the evaluation is giving an assessment that may not be based on, actual circumstances. And what I find disturbing is that, well, if what Mike Scioli did was so disturbing that day, why didn't he get a disciplinary action? If it didn't warrant disciplinary action, then why is it being held against him to tank him on these evaluation of needing improvement? His communication skills, they need improvement. And then there's no reference to where that comes from. This is what these guys are telling me, that this is what creates all these problems. And the point spreads are pretty dramatic between, like I already discussed. Is it 5 points all the way around? I guess it is, right? Unsatisfactory to needs improvement is a 5-point spread. Needs improvement to meets expectations of 5-point spread. And then needs to exceed is a 5-point spread. So, at least with these, it's like what I'm hearing on my side, no matter what we do, no matter what we come up with, but there's still the ability for when somebody is destined to be, because we're talking about layoff and retention here, when someone is destined to be saved and the other one's destined to be laid off, that you can pretty much, mess with these numbers any way you want to get that to happen. That's what the concern is. Whereas seniority, you can't mess with it. And I understand that, you can't touch half of the points like you proposed. That's nice. That's interesting. It's a step in the right direction, but everything else is still a liquid where if I wanted to say, well, listen, if I want to save Bruce and get rid of Doug, all I need to do is give him an exceed, and I don't even have to back it up why he exceeded, just because he comes in with a smile every day and he's a good guy and all that. But that 5 points will put him over the edge to where he keeps working and this guy doesn't, and he's been here for 2 years and he's been here for 22 years. And that's what, we got to tighten things up a little bit to where,
Our view of seniority is pretty much the same, but obviously in the other direction is that it just permits an employee to trump somebody that's outworking them with less discipline, with less additional skills or training. They just hang on and they're retained. But so you could argue either extreme. We're proposing something in the middle. We've offered more points for seniority, and we've offered less impact of performance on seniority for the purposes of building some number for retention. Okay, so that's 2 moves we've made in your direction.
right.
So now take a look at the bottom part where you picked it up, which is the 5-point shift concept, and flatten it a little bit. Give us a proposal on flattening it.
Just so you know, the disciplinary action is has a point assessment under 3, maybe section 3. That is a little bit more definitive. I mean, the guy was given a reprimand or has been suspended. That's always something a little bit more concrete than just assessing somebody as exceeding versus meeting. Where the guy was late a bunch of times, and so it's not seniority for everything. Like I said, we understand that the employee's record, but to have this big floating thing that is just so
We'll work on it a little bit, but performance is a critical component of work in Pasco County. The Board of County Commissioners supports performance and the measurement of performance. That's what we've got. So if you want to tool around with the numbers a little bit, you know, what we threw out just now on the 1 through 10 maximum points in the breakdown.
Yeah, well,
We're not
so-
married to that, we're throwing it out to show you that we're prepared to make movement on it.
Yeah, we appreciate that, but I just want to point out one other observation before we break, I guess, and talk about this. When somebody is viewed under performance, which is so important to Pasco County, someone's viewed as being needing improvement or that they've been unsatisfactory, typically speaking, someone who needs improvement or has been unsatisfactory would probably be the result of someone being disciplined. Not always, but performance-wise, it will be. So they're getting double dinged on the same event.
I see your concern about that. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the double ding as you refer to it. You know, people need improvement because their interest in their job is waned. They have outside factors that affect their performance. They lag behind in training or certifications. People that need improvement and are unsatisfactory can reach satisfactory levels of performance. You know, I think the focus on those should be not so much that you get a needs improvement or unsatisfactory, but should be how does the employee get away from that? How do they improve?
Let me ask you a question. Can anybody be evaluated as meeting or exceeding expectations who has received a written reprimand?
I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah, I would think that they.
I would think, for example, let's just say someone gets in an accident,
You know,
okay?
I don't check all 2,000 every year, so I'm.
But you understand my fear, though. Somebody gets in an accident, okay? Because they did not follow the proper safety instructions or whatever. Like they either damaged the equipment or done something wrong and they received a reprimand or possibly even a suspension. I find it hard to believe that you're going to evaluate them because with meeting or exceeding expectations, having that event on the record.
John, I see it almost every time I pick up a case where a public employer has asked me to represent them in a grievance or an arbitration. I find a file where the employee had a written counseling or a written reprimand, but for the last 5 years, they've been marked meets expectations. And in some cases, exceeds expectations. It does happen, you know, and it's challenging from my point of view when I pull over that file and, you know, suddenly the person's being disciplined for a second
Are
time.
you dealing with a point system in those cases?
Yeah, almost every place has some kind of point system now.
Okay, but a point system with a very specific concern that I have, that the person who's received a reprimand was assessed, because you're representing the employer, I guess, in this particular case, right? Of the employee.
Always the employer.
Okay, I thought so. And so when you're representing the employer, I would imagine the argument is from the union or the employee, well, how can I be such a horrible employee when you've given me evaluations that set me expectations, right? That's what the employee's position is. And you're saying, well, Mr. Arbitrator, take a look, they've gotten reprimands before. That's kind of what you're illustrating.
John, I've been in a room for a grievance where an employee being challenging a suspension without pay had their picture on the wall as the employee of the year. Okay? And when I asked the department head, when I walked into the room and said, what are you talking, this is the employee of the year? The supervisor didn't blink. He said, yeah, in totality, he was the employee of the year. This is one issue we're having an issue with.
Again, are you dealing with a point system and a challenge to the points that were assessed? Because that's the reason we're here. And so where is our assurance that an employee still can be the employee of the year or the employee of the month or receive a fair shake on what they've done all year long in light of having a written reprimand or suspension on it?
Write some language in that it does that.
Yeah,
if that's your concern, write some language and we'll take a look at it.
Does fire rescue still have the matrix system?
They had actually agreed to a modified matrix system. And I'm just trying to remember how it all ended up when we
Yeah, I think.
But they had agreed to different points. They reached an agreement, but it's on different points.
Yeah, and then we ended from the,
Yeah,
to the original language.
Well, we're going to take a look at your most recent encounter and evaluate it on our caucus.
Well, we have 8 minutes left, you want to talk about something?
We can't go beyond the incident.
No, I kind of double booked this afternoon.
As long as our next bargaining session.
Take a look.
I don't think we picked a date, but we can. You want to go off the recording while we look at dates?
Unless, I guess unless there's, I'm not going to come back with a counter in 8 minutes, I'll say right now.
No, I would think that this particular one, I feel like we could reach agreement on this if you come back with some reasonable numbers on it. That's what we're signaling to you, is that it's important for us to have a matrix, but we're flexible on what the numbers look like. And if you looked at our record of discussions with the firefighters, that's what we do with them too.
When was the last time you laid out the firefighter? I mean, does that happen a lot? I don't know.
We had one a couple of years ago. From that bargaining unit.
So do you want to stay on for?
No, I don't want to, we'll just go off right there. I guess we're done, and then we'll just pick a date for next time.
So we're going to end, it is 11:53. This is the end of the bargaining session.